Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Global Exchange Podcast. In today's episode, I'm going to be interviewing my AP World History teacher on his experience in the field of international relations, studying abroad in China, and being a teacher of history in today's world. So I hope you guys enjoy the interview and gain some insight from it. So enjoy. So, you've been teaching world history for a long time, and you've been running the Model UN team for a long time too. So, what sparked your interest in history and international relations, and why do you think it's important for kids to learn about these topics?
I was always interested in history. In elementary school, I had a fifth grade teacher that would, hi, I'm zooming right now. Wait, oh, okay. Okay. Um, so Mr. Broberg was a Civil War um buff, and so he would draw the Civil War battles and strategies and generals tactics and everything, and it was really interesting to me. But then I kind of got caught up in STEM in high school and went in that direction as an undergraduate, but found my way back to history because that's what I truly found interesting. And I had some college professors that were amazing and really inspired me. Model United Nations, too, you mentioned that. I think it's an amazing program that wasn't around when I was a student so much. Um, but when I started teaching world history at Santa Margarita Catholic High School, I came on board and just public speaking and knowledge of international relations. And the coolest part was collaboration. It wasn't just debating one another, it was collaborating to come up with solutions to try to pass resolutions. So I thought MUN was really, really cool with knowledge of the world, and there were historical committees as well. And Santa Margarita was traveling a lot. So I had spent time in China, which I think we're going to talk about a bit. We would take students to China for MUN conferences, to Beijing, the international school, and I would get to show them cities that I really love, like Suzhou. Um, we went to Korea, so MUN's really awesome for exploring international relations and developing public speaking, which is such a key, uh, um, important, I think, skill for students to get more comfortable with.
Okay. Um, just a little bit more about teaching history. So when you're teaching about sensitive topics such as um, the election the US just had, or maybe like topics where students have like personal opinions, how do you like encourage more like critical thinking and discussion versus like emotional, like heated debates?
Yeah, this is a really tough topic. Uh, Before the 2016 election, it was, I think, easier to have these. It was starting to get tougher, but I think 2016 changed things, and a lot of history teachers, including myself, I think, went away from having discussions because we felt they were too controversial, that there could be hurt feelings. And so I feel bad as a history teacher. The last 8 years have not been ones that have been full of a lot of debates. Just because, like you mentioned, the sensitivity to those issues. Um, and I've had parents complain as well, and it's difficult to navigate all of that. The emotional parts of debates. It, I'm not saying that's wonderful, but it is good that students come to class and they are passionate about ideas, and I welcome that. But yeah, you've got to parse through that emotion and try to look at it in a more rational with a more rational lens. I and just in talking about current events in history and political situations in Israel and Gaza, um, I well, maybe more the political events. There's usually a liberal bias in the classroom. Um, Usually students are more comfortable talking about the democratic liberal position than conservative students. And we just had this mock election at Sage, and the results were pretty close um, between Biden and Trump in 2024. And so there are a lot of students at our school that are conservative, have the conservative viewpoints, but they don't feel comfortable sharing those viewpoints in class. So that's something that I, as a teacher, I want everyone to feel like they can share what they think and their lens of the world and how they see things. But that's something that I'd like to work on. So talking about politics, talking about international events, making sure everybody feels comfortable discussing it's tough. It's become a lot tougher than when I started teaching in like 25 years, 20, 23 years ago, 24 years ago. So I haven't figured it out, Alex. But I do feel bad that as a teacher, I think I'm opening up a little too much about teaching right now, but I do feel bad that I don't think I talked enough about politics and international relations in the last 8 years when maybe we needed to even more because of the sensitivity and just the anxiety of getting pushed back by administrators and parents.
Okay.
Do you get
So yeah, I get it.
it? Being a history teacher is not hasn't been like the easiest gig the last 8 years. It's been a delicate kind of dance.
Okay. So moving on from that, to like your experience living abroad in China. Um, so what was the biggest cultural adjustment that you had to make, when you first moved over to China?
Um, that's a good question. I mean, there were lots of cultural adjustments, clearly language, um, food, um, but I don't think they were that that difficult.
Mm.
Um, the language, I didn't speak Mandarin, but I could speak enough that we could come to some kind of understanding between the English and the little Mandarin that I knew. So I could always communicate. I could always make people laugh too, which was a good way to communicate. Um, and then even though the food definitely was not an obstacle, it was wonderful. When I lived in Sichuan, it became spicier. So that sometimes was a little bit more challenging. Um, I don't, I should have an answer right now, but I just can't think of any glaring obstacle.
Okay. Um,
Did you have any obstacles when you were in Taiwan?
um, well, like I told them that my family was from like Taiwan, and they were like, "Oh, do you know Taiwanese?" And then they were like really shocked that I did it. So it's kind of like um
Yeah,
being like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
more American is kind of tough, I guess.
Yeah. I,
So
I You want me to talk about that too, like being an American in China and how that's viewed?
sure.
So I mean I think that was like in an upcoming question. So I was in Beijing in 2001 or 2002, and this was um uh when 9/11 happened. I went to Beijing, departed for Beijing right after 9/11, and the US invaded Afghanistan, and then Iraq. And I think prior to that time, being an American overseas and being an American in China was a little bit more favorable. But after that, international opinion turned on the reasons and justifications for especially the Iraq invasion. And my brother was also with me. He taught in Taiwan after. Um, but it was uncomfortable, and I remember him telling people sometimes that he was South African or he was Canadian because there was this animus for why does America have to get involved in so many disputes and always impact. And there was this feeling by people in China that I talked to that China just minds its own business and doesn't get involved in foreign conflicts. And so they looked down on the US. And I remember them criticizing George W. Bush. And even though I agreed with them, for whatever reason, I would argue because I don't know, I felt loyal to the president somehow. And I felt that they were being unfair to him, even though I agreed. It's hard to kind of reconcile, but in the moment. So it was kind of tough at that time to be an American. My brother wasn't the only person that my wife was living in Spain about the same time, and she has similar stories about how people didn't want to say they were from the US because it was there was a lot of negative ill will towards Americans at that point.
Okay.
And historically too, um, the terms that we would be called, um, uh, uh, there were historical, like foreign devil and those kind of things. There wasn't like animosity behind them, but you would hear those terms when we would be walking in the streets and whatnot. That didn't necessarily have to do with Iraq and Afghanistan, but there was that too. Just like the, I think, 19th century, imperialism and after the Opium Wars in China and the foreign encroachment and so I think that was historically too, that was something that people in rural areas especially like saw and would say to my brother and I.
Okay, so um last question, because me
Did
and
you
my
did you tell people did you try to conceal your Americanness in any way because you knew that they were going to, I don't know,
um
pass judgment on you negatively?
I mean the people, like, especially, like, so I live with like a host family, so
Hmm.
they knew it was like a program from America. So I think they specifically got chosen because they wanted to see um
Yeah.
like what Americans are like. So I didn't really have any issues with that. But like with like the other people that it was just strangers in Taiwan, they were kind of um I don't know, I feel like they kind of looked at it like maybe me a little weird because like they thought I was just from Taiwan, like a Taiwanese person, but like my Chinese not really that good. So um yeah.
Gotcha.
Um so we're kind of like running out of time. So um the last question is, what kind of impression did you have towards China before you went there? And then did any of your like preconceptions change after you lived there for a while?
Yeah, I had always, I don't know, been interested in East Asia as a student in high school. I spent a summer in Japan studying Japanese during my junior and senior years. So, uh, when I was finishing up a graduate thesis, my professor came up with the idea. I didn't have any job prospects really lined up in the United States, and he said, "Why don't you finish your thesis in China? And I know someone at this university in Beijing." And um, I connected China to communism and this communist state, and I was really interested to see what that was like. But I found it not to be so much that way. Um, Lots of capitalism. I remember one time I was with someone that needed to go to the hospital. So for the ambulance to go, we had to pay the ambulance driver, and then they took us to the wrong hospital. So we had to pay the ambulance driver to take us to the right hospital. And to get a wheelchair, we had to pay someone. So there was all kinds of capitalism going on. So that idea of like, I don't know, this Marxist communist like Maoist China was not what I experienced. And going to the South and seeing Shenzhen and just the factories and cargo ships and um, all of the people that migrated to the South. It was not as I had expected. No, um, but like underneath the the politics and the borders and the states, it's just human beings trying to do their best and trying to provide for their families, and that's what I came away from China, like regardless of the Communist Party and the US, and it was just people that are doing their best, that were nice, that wanted to buy their kids a Happy Meal on the weekend. So that's that's what I thought going in, and I came away just realizing even more how connected we all are, and what what the end goal of families and whatnot, regardless of where we live, is just trying to be happy and provide for one another. I was treated super well. Everyone was couldn't have been nicer, and it was awesome. I didn't have any kind of nightmare story.
Okay, so
All right.
that's all the questions. So thank you for agreeing to do this. So because
Thanks,
otherwise,
Alex.
yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you want to keep seeing videos like this, please let me know in the comments. And if you have any suggestions for what videos I should do next, please also let me know. If you enjoyed this content, please subscribe and leave a like. It really means a lot to me. And thank you for watching.